Hi, welcome to DataCare channel. Today we are going to have a look at Synology RT-2600 router, how to configure it, have a detailed look at the menu, and have a complete walkthrough. All right, let's start. So currently I'm logged into the web interface of RT-2600. You can also configure it using the mobile app, but generally web app is a lot more easier to configure and it's more powerful as well. Uh, your desktop might look a little different than my desktop because you might have different shortcuts created, but your main menu will look exactly the same as mine does, other than the VPN plus server and safe access, because these two apps I have installed from the package center, and we'll also look at how to install extra packages. Let's look at the network center first. The first tab is the status tab, and as you would guess, it shows you the status of the internet connection, the Wi-Fi, the total upload and download rates, the list of all the devices that are connected, and the load on CPU and memory. Internet is where you would configure your internet connection. In UAE, the default internet connection is PPPoE, and this is where you would configure it. But apart from the username and password, you will also need the VID, which you can find from Etisalat or Do to configure that. Click on ISP settings, enable IPTV VoIP, and use your VID here. VPN settings, remember when we look at VPN settings here, these are the settings to configure your Synology RT-2600 as a VPN client. So if you want to connect your RT-2600 to another VPN server, this is where you will configure it. If you want to use your RT-2600 as a VPN server itself, that will be a different setting, and we'll look at that later. So if I click on VPN settings, it will ask me what kind of a VPN server I have, and then I'll be able to configure my VPN server here and connect to the VPN server. If you ask me why you would want to do that, is because if you have a VPN server through which you connect all your you want all your network data to go through, then it's easier to simply connect your RT-2600 once to that VPN and then have all your devices data be routed through the VPN. So it's easier. Enable secondary interface, and the secondary interface is if you want to configure a LAN port as a WAN port and achieve the failover. This is where you do it. So if I enabled it, then one of the LAN ports will automatically be converted to a WAN port, and I will have a failover support. Let's look at it here in Smart WAN. Right now I have only one WAN connectivity. Yes, in case this interface fails, I will not be connected to internet anymore. But if I had also configured one LAN port as a WAN port, then I will have the failover, and in case this fails, this would kick in and I would still be connected to the internet. That's what it does. Under connections, you also have the option of using your own DNS server. Typically you would leave it to the ISP, but if you have any other DNS server, for example, if you use 8.8.8, you can use that here. 3G and 4G, you can connect a compatible Wi-Fi dongle and convert your RT-2600 to a 3G or 4G router as well. Quick Connect and Dynamic DNS. If you want to access your router from outside on the cloud, then you will need to have a dynamic DNS address. If you use any of the major dynamic DNS service providers, you can add that here. For example, this supports major ones like the FreeDNS, DinDNS, Google, and a lot many, as you can see. Or you can sign up for a free Synology Quick Connect ID and connect to your router from the internet. Port forwarding is if you have an application running in your network and you want a particular port to be forwarded to a machine. It's extremely simple to create like any other router. Just click on create, either give your own rule name, or use for example, I would use an FTP here, and then it automatically knows that FTP generally is run on 20 and 21, though you could be running it on an alternate port as well. Give the private IP address where you want the traffic to be forwarded to, and here you can select from a drop-down list. For example, I can send it to this machine and the protocol, and that's it. Port triggering is if you want the port forwarding to be not to be enabled all the time, but only forward the port In case there is a traffic incoming on a particular port, and that's where you do the port triggering. DMZ is demilitarized zone. If you want to forward all the traffic to a particular machine, you would use that. Local network, this is where you will look at your default IP address of the device, enable the DHCP server, and there is an option to create a static route as well. Generally, you would not need to create any static route. If you look at your IP routing table, it has all the routes already defined for you. So in my case, anything that's in this range would go through the LAN, and anything which is in this range would go through the VPN interface, and everything else will go through the internet. But in case you have a network path to be defined, you can define that here. DHCP client shows you all the clients that are connected to your device and given an IP address through DHCP. You will be able to click on any of those addresses and click on add to address reservation, and they'll be added to the address reservation, and they will all the time be given the same IP address. For example, I have a few devices here. For example, every time this PC connects with this MAC address, it's always given this IP address. IPTV and VoIP is the same setting that we looked at earlier. Traffic control, this is where you can give granular traffic control. You have all the devices here. You can either outrightly ban it by clicking on banned, or give a custom speed here, or make it a high priority device. You'll be able to look at these options in detail once you click on edit. These are the overall upload and download guaranteed bandwidths, and you can also create an app rule. For example, I might want to have an app rule for YouTube, that on YouTube I want to give this much bandwidth. So this is where you would define all that. Monitor will show you the live traffic, the total upload and the total download speeds currently, and the report shows the weekly report, which is the default report, and you can also set how periodically you want the report to be generated and where that report should be emailed to. Security, we have a few places where you will be defining the security. This is not the only thing, so keep that in mind. Here, make sure that enable DUS protection is always on, because denial of service, you will get a lot of denial of service attacks from the same IP addresses. So just keep this on. Pass-throughs will automatically be checked on for you as you configure your VPN. Firewall also does not need any intervention. Generally, all the rules are automatically created. So look at the port forwarding rules, which were created automatically in the firewall for you. Service, needless to say, just keep only those services enabled that you need on the router. You can disable all the other services. Auto block, if Synology RT-2600 sees too many failed login attempts from a particular IP address, it will block it. So right now the settings are that in case there are 5 failed login attempts within 5 minutes, then block that IP address for 1 day. Operation mode is nothing but how you want it to be used. If typically you would want it to be used as a wireless router which connects directly to the internet, or you can also use it as a wireless access point where your router connects to the main router and then gives the Wi-Fi access to your complete network. Let's look at the next menu, which is the control panel, and look at what configuration options you have in the control panel. You can create users, or you can pull the users from a domain or from an LDAP server. Storage and file services, these two menus only make sense once you have an external storage device connected to your USB port of RT-2600. Services, you can enable SSH and get access to the terminal. Keep NTP on all the time so that your device always syncs the time with the network. SNMP service also can be enabled if you want, and you want to have the locks enabled. Under notifications, you have a detailed list of notifications as to what kind of notification should be sent where. Nothing to do here. Device shows you all the statistics of the devices. LEDs, you can schedule your LEDs so that they are not blinking all the time. A reboot schedule, you can put a schedule how frequently you want it to be rebooted automatically, though you wouldn't need to ever do that, because I had mine running for almost 3 months and had never had to reboot it. Printer, this is interesting. Now, as I told you, it has a USB port, and you can connect a USB printer to this device and configure that printer as a network printer, giving the access to all your network devices. So if you just click on add network printer, it will ask you the IP address of the printer. This is in case of a network printer, of course, but if you have a USB printer connected to this, then you will be able to configure that USB printer as a LAN printer from the Synology desktop app. System shows you if the system is updated, and gives you the option, of course, to update the system as well, update the system databases. SRM settings, a few settings like whether it should be given external access to the SRM, and if so, then what port would you like to use, your regional options, and a few login styles, the style of the screen that you're greeted with at first, and the Synology account, of course, that gives you the access to the quick connect and dynamic DNS. This is about the control panel. In the default packages that come, just Wi-Fi Connect is left. Wi-Fi Connect is where you will configure your Wi-Fi from. The first screen shows the status. If you click on Wi-Fi points and click on add, this is where you'll be connecting your MR2200s to it. So if you click on add and click on next, after that, once I click on Wi-Fi points already, it will detect any MR2200 that's been switched on and ready to be configured, and will configure it automatically. So as you can see here right now, I have one MR2200 connected. Wireless shows you the SSID of the wireless, and gives you the option to change it and change the passwords and configure WPS. Guest network gives you the option to define your guest network, the SSID, security level, and the password of the guest network, and the schedule of the guest network. And you can also enable a guest portal. So after guest portal, you can customize your page style as well. This is the portal that any guest who connects will be greeted with at first. MAC filter is a security feature. You can either blacklist or whitelist the devices on your network. So if I say deny the MAC addresses in the list, I am basically blacklisting all the MAC addresses that are in this list from accessing my network. Or I can say only allow these MAC addresses, which is like whitelisting, and I'll only be allowing only the MAC addresses that are defined in the list to be given access to my network. I can click on create, select a device. It will automatically tell me the MAC address of the device and then create it. But keep in mind that this is not absolutely foolproof, because MAC address can actually be faked, and if someone knows the MAC address of a device that has access on your network, then they can always fake that MAC address and connect to a network. Okay, yes, we want to leave. All right. Network tools are just a few tools. One of the tools is interesting in this. You know ping already. When you want to ping a particular network connection, or the trace route to see how many hops it takes to reach a particular destination. Wake on LAN, this is interesting. If you have a device on the network that you want to boot remotely, then you can do it with Wake on LAN. What it needs, of course, is your device would have to have a network card that supports WOL or Wake on LAN. How this will work is you will add a device. Once I do that, after that, once I click on wake up, it will send a magic packet to that device, and if the LAN card is WOL compatible, it will recognize that magic planet and boot the device up. This is it about the main menus. Now you can go to the package center and install any other package. Right now they have the safe access, which allows you to create the profiles of the users and give them the control and take the control over their internet time and internet usage. VPN plus server to convert your Synology router into a server. Threat prevention, a download station, which will be a BitTorrent client, and a couple of other utilities like DNS server, cloud station, UPnP, TLNA media server that can serve the media files to your smart TV, and a Radius server. Okay, I have installed VPN plus server, and we'll very briefly look at the VPN plus server. Most of the users will use the standard VPN, either HSTP, L2TP, PPTP, or OpenVPN. OpenVPN is extremely secure and very easy to use. To use it, you will just enable OpenVPN server, give the maximum number of concurrent users, the port, you can leave it to the default port, and then once you click on export configuration, you will get a file which you can save. In that file, you will only have to update the IP address or the DNS name of your device, and then you'll be able to connect to that server. Synology also gives you an option of Synology's proprietary VPNs, which is SSL VPN, Web VPN, and Web VPN portal and remote desktop. But for all those, you will need to have the licenses. One license is given free to you, and other licenses can be bought. There is also site-to-site IPsec VPN for the enterprise customers. Let's very briefly look at the safe access as well before we close this walkthrough. Overview shows you the number of profiles you have and the dangerous attempts that you have had, etc. In the profile, you can define the profile of an individual. For example, I have one profile here, and if I click on the device on the profile and try to edit it, I have assigned only one device to this, but I can assign one more device to it, and then define an internet schedule, define a time quota as to how much time I want to be assigned to this user, define the web filters either from the list of predefined categories, or I can define my own category as well, and switch on the safe search. This is pretty much it. In security, you can just turn it on or off. Activity shows you all the activities from a user, and notification as usual tell you which notification should be sent where. This is a brief overview of RT-2600. In case you have any other questions pertaining to RT-2600, please feel free to write to us in the comment section below, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for watching.